Okay, hello and welcome everyone to the Severe ME Day 2025, the Lived Experience Forum. My name's Julie and I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a minute, but I've got a couple of acknowledgements to do. So our topic today is assistive technology and we have got the time free between 3 and 5. This is Queensland time, Australia, but we are trying to have an informal discussion. So we have a panel and we do have some PowerPoints, which I'm going to be hosting, but we do want people to discuss and to join in the discussion if they're able to. So first of all, the acknowledgements. So ME Group Australia would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this nation. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land across which we work. For me, I work in Brisbane, so that's the Turrbal and the Yagara people. But today I'm coming to you from home, so I'm on Gubbi Gubbi land behind the Sunshine Coast. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community where we are all located today. We respectfully acknowledge our elders past and present and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people in the webinar or who are watching. My second big acknowledgement is just to say that this forum today is happening in August, which is to acknowledge Severe ME Day within Australia. And this happens on the 8th of August. So we are having this event still in August, but it took a little bit longer to get organised and for us to all gather here today. We would like to acknowledge the strength and resilience of the people with severe and very severe ME. And just to say you are not forgotten. Please keep hope and remember that we are getting closer to understanding the underlying pathology for ME. And I just wanted to point everyone to the Decode ME research, which has only come out fairly recently. And that, there's a lot of hope that the science and the research is finally catching up with what people have been reporting. And therefore, we want to encourage people who are struggling to realize that actually every day we're getting a little bit closer. So just want to make that acknowledgement. So, as I said, my name's Julie Hughes. I'm an occupational therapist and I'm a lecturer in occupational therapy and I'm the occupational therapy advisor for ME Group Australia. And recently I've been doing some private practice in the area as well. So, just my little plug there. And I also wanted to acknowledge the fantastic work of Rachel, Sandra, and Danielle as the mega volunteers for doing all the hard work in the background in preparation for this session and also today as I'm speaking. So thank you very much for your hard work in making this forum happen. A little bit of housekeeping. The forum is being recorded and it will be shared on the ME Group Australia YouTube channel and social media. So if you would prefer to remain private, then please keep your camera off and we would ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute unless they are speaking. We wish to create a safe space here in the forum, and we would encourage you to put any questions or comments that you have in the chat. But we just do have a few rules, which are that no derogatory remarks are made about any other people or any other organisations, and that you do not promote any unproven treatments within the chat. Anyone who does not observe these rules will be removed from the webinar. I think that's very unlikely, but it's just one of our rules. So please enjoy and learn from today's presentation. So just a quick overview. Oh, I didn't realize I'd set them to do that. I'm just going to do most of my talking at the beginning, a little tiny bit at the end. So I just want to set the scene for the purpose of the forum and the context for the forum. Then I'll move into introductions, the best part, which is the panel of experts that we have here today to discuss severe ME and assistive technology. And then we have got some considerations with regard to equipment and some resources, and then there'll be the closing. The purpose of the forum is to inform and also inspire people with ME and or anyone with long COVID who's watching this forum to be more aware of options in terms of assistive technology and also where to get help and how to negotiate any barriers which could present themselves in terms of assistive technology. And also to educate health professionals with regard to the needs and the voices of our lived experience people with severe ME, what is actually helpful to them, and to for health professionals to recognise that they should go to the experts and they should actually listen to people with severe ME in terms of what they actually need and want. Watching this forum is one of the ways of educating yourself. So thank you very much to anyone who is watching for either of those reasons. We have a number of people in our lived experience panel. Unfortunately, a couple of the named people here have last minute had to withdraw their participation today, and I'm afraid that is indicative of people with severe or very severe ME. That often they would like to be involved, they would like to participate, but actually they're not able to. They probably have used up their energy just in trying to prepare for the event. So we do have Ketra with us, Ketra Wooding. We do have Shelley Lee Waller, and we do have Sandra Mayer with us today. But we do acknowledge that Adrian and Tracy were very much a part of the preparation for this forum. So I'm going to get on to introductions now. So Shelley is the first person who has a lived experience. I'm a career journalist editor who 25 years ago began working with Queensland Health Department and currently as an advocate for organ and tissue donation. I helped set up the Parents Carers for ME CFS Australia Facebook group after my eldest developed ME after glandular fever at 12 years old. He was mild before his diagnosis led doctors to insist on graded exercise therapy. This pushed him quickly to severe, mostly bedbound. He graduated senior schooling over 4 years instead of 2 with the help of a missing school's telepresence robot. He's doing well, and it's better thanks to NDIS support, pacing, response to LDN, and some assistive tech ranging between mild and moderate. He's now able to study music part-time, and Shelley says that she also has a range of ME comorbid conditions, POTS, EDS, SJD. Ooh, that one I'm not quite sure about, limiting her to 3 days of work from home. Ketra, who's also here with us today. Ketra Wooding is a former professional yachty who was in 2011 diagnosed with severe ME. She spent 10 years living in aged care, which she credits with saving her life. Now, as an ACA registered counsellor, Ketra has started her own counselling business to support those dealing with chronic illness. She also volunteers with Lifeline, finding purpose and connection in giving back when she can. Ketra still needs to spend most of her time resting to avoid relapsing, and she needs a lot of daily support. But things are looking brighter with the help of her toy poodle Bindi and careful heart rate pacing. Sandra is here with us today. Sandra has a background in IT, complementary therapies, and vocational training. Life was vital before ME developed in 2012 after a virus. An attempt to return to work faltered, social activities and hobbies fell away. With no education of PENE, also known as post-exertional malaise, and appropriate pacing, her health worsened. She took 5 years to a clear diagnosis, then living within her energy envelope became her goal. She slowly stabilized but has remained in the moderate spectrum. Understanding the history of ME and following the biological science with preference for the international consensus criteria are very important to her. Sandra is passionate about learning from mistakes of the past and forging new care pathways. She's excited by Mega's vision for a multidisciplinary clinic and supports the organisation as energy levels allow. Tracy's not able to be with us here today, but we do want to acknowledge her contributions. And same with Adrian. Unfortunately, again, Energy is not allowed her to join with us here today. I won't read her bio, but it is there just to acknowledge that she was very much a part of the preparations for this forum. John is here with us today. John Mitchell, AT and Smart Home Manager. He is highly knowledgeable of AT, home and environment automation that could enable severe ME, people with severe ME to participate in daily living activities. He also hosts workshops for allied health professionals, product demonstration and consultation at client's home or at a showroom. Claire? Clare Batkin is also an occupational therapist. She's a clinical educator, sessional academic. She's founder of the clinical education business, Your OT. Another little tiny plug there. And she is a mighty contributor for the ME Group Australia. Jo Mack is a neurological physiotherapist. She's the founder of Mobile Allied Health Services, My Rehab team. She passionately supports her clients with very severe ME. She also is across peer review functional capacity assessment. She is an AT advisor. She assesses AT needs, recommends and writes AT requests, and she coordinates with suppliers such as John. Okay, so that is the end of our lovely panel. So I now wanted to just set the scene in terms of the context for the forums, assistive technology. What is it? This is a very, very broad definition here. So, assistive technology is an umbrella term for assistive products and their related systems and services. Assistive products help maintain or improve an individual's functioning related to cognition, communication, hearing, mobility, self-care, and vision, thus enabling their health, well-being, inclusion, and participation. So this is from the World Health Organization. But I also found a definition that I really like. This is from Ricky Buchanan, who's a very well-known person with very severe ME. Stuff that helps people do stuff. And I really like that one. I think probably that's my favorite. I think that's very true. I like that one a lot. And just to clarify, a couple more slides and then I promise I will stop talking at you. So what's the difference? So we've got assistive technology and sometimes you hear the term adaptive equipment. So assistive technology is the bigger term. Any item, system or product used to improve functional capacity can be bought off the shelf. And then we've got adaptive equipment. So this is a subcategory and refers to something specifically designed for people with disabilities. And for any of you out there, you'll know as soon as something is regarded as being adaptive equipment, the price goes up. It's just useful to know some of this some of this technical jargon, because that in itself can be a barrier to understanding assistive technology. And then this slide is also one that I hope you might find useful. This was from the NDIS, just to show you how AT is a very broad church in terms of the fact that we've got all those items which could be bought by anybody, but which can obviously be very helpful, right up to custom-made solutions. So the price goes up, and also the complexity of the prescription and obviously the customization increasing as well. So just so you're aware, there is a lot that actually goes into that kind of prescription and acquisition of those highly customized options in terms of AT, but they do exist. And then my last slide on this is just the everyday kind of examples here. So if someone's having difficulty with mobility, then there are various pieces of equipment which could be helpful to them. If it's communication, that might be something quite simple through to something that a speech pathologist might well work with someone. So to develop alternative methods of communication if speech is no longer an option. There's obviously assistive technology in terms of hearing, vision loss. There's also cognitive aids, environmental control systems, and that's probably something John can talk to us a little bit more about. So, smart home technology. And then there's educational learning aids and computer access tools, eye gaze technology, and so on if someone can't type, and just those daily living aids. So it is a very, very broad church in terms of what comes under assistive technology. So there may be things that you haven't even thought about, which are actually come under this broad category. And hopefully there are things that today it may occur to you that actually some of these things could be quite helpful to you, and that's what our panel will be discussing. So, my last slide where I'm going to be talking is just this one, just in terms of setting the scene, in terms of severe and very severe ME. So, that's our focus today. So this comes from the International Consensus Primer for Medical Practitioners. This gets shortened to ICP, and this is the diagnostic criteria and guidelines that ME Group Australia recommend. This is our focus today. So severe is someone who is mostly housebound, very severe, mostly bedbound and require assistance with daily functions. And those who are very severely affected are usually too ill to attend regular medical appointments. So just to make that distinction that this is the focus of our severe ME forum today. Okay, well, I think I've probably talked for long enough. So we're going to move into the looking at assistive technology and ME, and we want to have some questions and some discussion between our lived experience experts and our special guests with their knowledge. Right. Okay. Not sure what came in that order. So, questions for the lived experience panel and special guests. So, this was a big, broad area that I thought would be good to start with. What can be the benefits of assistive technology? And I've just put a couple of prompts there in terms of the fact that people have described AT as life-changing. How can it save time and energy, and how can AT improve quality of life? So I can see that Ketra is already raising her hand. So Ketra, would you like to start us off?
Um, I think for someone with severe ME, for me, the main thing that assistive technology does is it allows me to control my environment, who I let in and out, with sort of home devices like automated doors and windows and automated lights. And my wheelchair allows me to control my environment where I go. When I was in aged care, it allowed me to get out of a chemically laden sort of environment and spend most of my time outside wearing welding goggles and ear defenders because I couldn't handle light noise. It's a really good look. So um, I wanted to ask a question. It's sort of a physio question or an OT question. So probably for Joe, maybe. I was prescribed an electric wheelchair that lays completely flat while I was in aged care. Um, and it was really evident I needed one. I couldn't even sit up. I was transferred with a slide sheet. And I've improved a lot since then. So I can now sit up for short periods and I can, with a little bit of help, get in with a slide board. But so I use a wheelchair to sit up, but I wonder if if you were prescribing a wheelchair earlier so that someone didn't have to get to the point of being bedbound, is there a point with ME patients that you sort of look at where you're like, oh, shouldn't be walking, you should be sitting down at this point, or when would you look at putting someone into a wheelchair?
That's a really good question, Ketra.
Yeah.
Certainly, as we were talking about the purposes of AT, one of the key reason is for energy conservation, and conservation is more than it's such a key for the ME population in that by conserving energy, not only then do you have more energy for the day, but you can potentially then slow down deterioration over time as well. So certainly in a nutshell, yes, definitely there is scope for looking into having a wheelchair earlier. Now, the tricky bit is that if you're wanting funding, like NDIS funding for such a piece of aid, if you're not using it right now, often then the application write-up can be very difficult. So one
Hmm.
of the things
Can
that
I
we,
just
yeah,
add there, even though I was completely bedbound, we
mhm.
had to fight to get the wheelchair because I was told I hadn't used one. I wouldn't be able to use one. So that really, I really feel what you're saying there. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So then, what from the recent experience that we've had so far, where and I'll use the term dynamic disability because I see ME to be a really dynamic sort of disability. So what we have to do, what we have had to, or what was helpful to do, was to actually look at the like a behavioral mapping of somebody to look at then what energy level that they are in, whether they are in paralysis, and just actually mapping it throughout the day so that we can demonstrate what's actually going on in this person's presentation, particularly in their energy presentation, but also in their mobility presentation as well, so that we can demonstrate to the NDIS that not only is ME a dynamic disability, but also that even if the person is not using the chair all the time because they're in bed, the reason why they're in bed is that, then we can demonstrate it in that kind of behavioral mapping. So we found that we got our client to do like a 7-day map or 2 weeks map actually of what's going on every day, what they were doing, whether they were sitting up or they were actually in bed lying, because sometimes that you actually need to can only function in a lying position, even though you might be nibbling a little bit. So we had to actually show a really clear graph of that, and that was able to help us to demonstrate the importance of energy conservation, but the need for a wheelchair, which then enables energy conservation to take place, and it enables then the person to be outside of their room rather
Mm.
than being confined to the space of the room, which can be an attractive prospect with the NDIS with their section 34 of wanting people to be out, out and about, to be interacting and engaging. So yes, in summary, definitely we see a lot of scope in prescribing a piece of equipment mainly then for the purpose of energy conservation, but also to meet the current needs. But to demonstrate that clearly to the NDIS, we found that having a really clear demonstration of the person's activity level throughout the day, and actually what's going on symptomatically in terms of their presentation helps the NDIS to appreciate the potential benefit of that piece of equipment, and the long-term benefit that it would have.
Thank you. Covered that beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Did you want to add anything to what Joe said?
No, just to say that I would agree in terms of we really need to spell out the specifics. So we can't just say, like, explain what makes sense to us because they really just don't understand. Often the people that are reading our reports don't have any disability or health related background and they're just judging it against their criteria. So the more we can capture those specifics, so that's one thing. Therapists can't put detail in their reports if it hasn't been captured. And obviously, therapists can't be there 24/7 to really capture those subtle fluctuations and things like that that happen in your day. So that's where it's, but at the same time, we also can't expect, with your limited energy levels to, just fill in masses of logs and things like that. So it's a team effort to try to find a way to capture the data in a way that is actually manageable for the people with ME or their carers and families as well. Because, yeah, I agree with Joe, without that data, it's very hard to get any sort of success in terms of NDIS related funding.
And John, is that something that your company does as well? Do you guys do wheelchairs?
We do. My background is actually in rehab equipment, in specializing in scripted power chairs and wheelchairs. And I'd spent about 11 years in that space and then moved into automation with my brother. And now we, as a company, as Smart Places, have both rehab and automation together. Currently, we provide low-level equipment as we are growing that portion of the business, but specifically around postured seating chairs that are motorized that also can be moved around the home that can provide pressure relief and tilt, and things like adjustable beds, pressure mattresses, and some key mobility products. But yeah, I agree with everything that everyone else has said in regards to how you might approach it. I have a little bit of OT experience, but yes.
And have you seen AT in the form of wheelchairs or other AT change people's lives?
Uh, Certainly. Specifically within ME, sorry, I don't have an awful lot of experience except for meeting Rachel. But the spectrum of how a mobility equipment can impact someone's life, definitely. I have had a client with Guillain-Barré syndrome. He ended up needing a chin control and was moved into a SDA home, and we were able to mobilize him using that chin control. And then further down the road, as automation specialist, we automated his environment so he could open his doors by voice and use his blinds. But specifically with mobility, yes, every single client that I've met, it's pretty ground breaking for them.
Yeah, and I think it's important that point that Joe made as well about people being able to get out of their room if at all possible, because just being confined to your bed or confined to one room or even confined to your house means that your whole life is shrinking down to a much smaller space. Is that something you want to say any more about, Joe? People being able to kind of get out and about using AT?
Yeah, I think that in the case of the experience I've had with different clients, um, a good example is that a person may not even be able to attend a doctor's appointment whilst waiting at the clinic if they didn't have a tilt and space function, because then the dysautonomia, the POTS, the orthostatic intolerance will then cause them to get into a crisis point whilst waiting in the waiting room for an appointment. So that's a really good example of what a wheelchair is able to do to enable that person to manage their outings. But at the same time, then again, that similar function allows that person, when they're outside of the room, to actually then regularly manage their symptoms in that way. So modulate their symptoms of what I've spoken about, the POTS, the dysautonomia, the orthostatic intolerance, whilst they're outside of the room. So they don't then have to quickly get back to bed to then, to then recuperate again. So it's the only way, actually, often if you don't have a wheelchair, well, then you can't be outside of the room. It's not just for mobility purposes. Unlike other populations of clients who are using a wheelchair for mobility, our ME client group, they need it for more reasons, of managing the whole gamut of the presentation of ME or the symptoms of ME.
Right, thank you. And Claire, I can see you've popped back in. I just wondered, beyond wheelchairs, have you seen assistive technology change people's lives? And, obviously it may not just be people with severe ME, but just wondered if you had some examples.
I suppose sometimes it's even like we say, these sometimes everyday items are actually the most effective, and it doesn't need to be the fancy, expensive piece of equipment. And like, yeah, it is not just people with ME, but people with other chronic conditions or that impact their fatigue levels or breathlessness and things like that, and other symptoms. Probably within my experiences, it's been like just some very simple examples could be something as simple as being able to sit down in the shower. For people that were previously mobilizing, maybe in those early stages of their conditions, just having that piece of AT doesn't just help that particular task, but it also means that it's saving energy for all the other tasks in their day. So I suppose that's maybe one of the benefits that we, as an OT as well, which can sometimes also strengthen our justifications for funding, is that this piece of AT, yes, will help them to do this particular activity, but it's also if it saves their energy so that then they aren't going into that feeling of exhaustion, they can actually do more activities as well. So it's having sort of looking at the whole picture and capturing that and using it to strengthen our justifications, which is really important as well.
John, you've got your hand up.
I just want to share one experience from the history of where I've worked that always stuck with me. And it was sometimes it's not always the functional application, but just feeling like a human. There was a lady who was in a power chair, and for a long time she wanted to go into a standing power chair, not ME related. But the day we did the delivery of the chair, she was able to stand the chair up and kiss her husband at eye to eye level. And they both broke
Nice.
down in tears. We broke down in tears. And it was a moment of, just feeling like a human, being able to have those interpersonal relationships in a way that they remember and still to be able to achieve that.
Perfect example. Ketra, I can see you want to join in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I actually find tilt and space wheelchairs were too upright for me when I first was trialing wheelchairs. So the wheelchairs that can stand up are often the types of wheelchairs that can lay flat as well. So in terms of finding a wheelchair that can lay flat, that can be really suitable. The models that stand up for people with ME because they can go completely flat and you can properly deeply rest in them when you need to.
Great. Joe.
Just wanted to add, I was just recently in an AAT meeting, and it was an interesting one because the comment that was made by the lawyer was that my client was wanting equipment for luxurious reasons, because she wants to enjoy a luxurious life. And some of these, an example of the item was actually a bathrobe. And it was interesting because I have had a number of clients whereby that they have found not having to dry themselves after a bath using a mainstream item like a bathrobe has been the most helpful thing. And this is the case for one of my ABI client, a client with EDS, and another client who was needing an energy conservation as well. So yes, we were talking about mainstream items that can make a big difference. And sometimes it could be hard, really hard for the NDIS to understand, the reasoning behind it.
Thanks, Joe. Shelley, I could see you nodding. I wondered if you wanted to say anything with regard to your son and AT.
Sorry, yes, I was absolutely nodding because that was really the experience. The worst thing that I did was that I didn't get an OT involved early enough. I wasn't aware as a carer how much that global constant, how everything accumulates and adds up. And that was, honestly, we believe that having all of this arranged did, and enabled my son to get out of his rolling pen, which we didn't even realize he was in rolling pen at all times, until he had, an Aura ring, a smart watch, all those little grabby tools, an intercom, smart door, everything that, and including that wearing a bathrobe instead of toweling, which is actually quite exhausting after a hot shower. And it is very hard to explain that to someone else. So, yes, that was why I was really nodding, because it was all those little tiny things, propping, holding the phone up with props. God, we had lots of bits and pieces, but they all came in once we were able to access NDIS, and it's so disappointing for those people who cannot access NDIS because it is just too hard to get on there and pay for a proper functional assessment report and having an OT come in and do that work. Yeah.
Mm. Shelley, you just mentioned, I mean, your son, what age was he when you were talking about him wearing the bathrobe?
Yeah, so he started it was probably 14 to 16 that was his absolute worst. Where
So
15 minutes upright was the end of him crashed out for the rest of the day. And that is, and having a teenager who's used to being really active and trying to keep them flat, it was almost impossible. Well, it was really impossible. But actually, it did take him being able to see what was on his watch and the warning. And a lot of, I had, once we got NDIS, I had a physio come in every week to the home and teach him, and he listened to her, whereas he didn't listen to
instead of you.
telling him he had to be flat. If he could stay flat all the time, he would get better. As much as humanly possible, he would have the energy to do some things upright. So there's extra challenges when they're teenagers and they don't have the ability to regulate that or to even see cause and effect because they're so cognitively impaired that they can't actually connect. Oh, I did this thing and this thing, therefore this is why I'm wrecked for the 3 days afterwards. Like it was actually very hard even for him to remember what he did yesterday to actually know to be able to pace the day after and the day after. So yeah.
Mhm. I was just thinking though as well when using that example of the bath towel, just as a teenager having some independence. Um, and I wonder, is that something which has happened for people, Ketra, maybe thinking of you, in terms of having some independence, having a little more satisfaction with or quality of life because of AT. And, obviously I get the wheelchair, but even beyond the
Mm.
wheelchair, have there been examples for you?
Yeah, a huge, huge example. When I lived in aged care, anyone could come into the room at any time. Um, Nurses don't, some of them do, but a lot don't knock. So I never had privacy, and I was using a bedpan, so I had no privacy at the worst time sometimes. And I've gone from that to living in specialist disability accommodation, which I think about 6% of people on the NDIS can be eligible for, um, although it is a difficult process to get funding for. Um, but now that I live in aged care, I think, sorry, now that I'm out of aged care and I'm in my own place, the things that I am grateful for every day is I can press a, a button and open my front door and my bedroom door. So I can control from my bed who comes in. I don't have to give all my support workers a code because, as lovely as they are, they're sometimes a bit of a rolling door while they find good stuff. And I don't want to give everyone who comes to help me entrance to my house at any time. So just that privacy, that independent control over who's in my space is incredible. I use a Fabaro Z-Wave button, which is connected to Alexa. It's gotten to the point now that every time I say the word Alexa, my dog's like, "What's gonna happen?" She's ready for action.
Great, thank you. And does that feed into anything that you do, John, with that kind of level of smart home technology, is it?
Certainly. So, yeah, smart home technology is pretty broad, and that applies to everything in a home that's electronic that can move or could move. Certainly, we do provide door motorization, and like you said, Ketra, the problem sometimes is that people might just let themselves into a door or it's unlocked. We use a smart keypad that works on an app that allows you to have 200 users. You can add and delete support workers, and you can create a code for emergency services, and you can link that to voice control that allows you to open your front door. I did bring a few props for us to kind of look at for things if you weren't sure what they were. And there are many different ways of automating a door. Um, you could use a Fabara Z-Wave wireless button. We can use a remote. You can use a app, you can use a voice control, you can use a tag. We recently started doing a solution which is a little tag that gets zipped to your wheelchair. And if you approach the door acknowledges that you've got that tag on your piece of equipment, and it automatically opens the door non-verbally and without any action from hands, which for someone struggling with motor neuron disease, for example, that's a really valid evolving solution that can mean they can use their keypad initially, they can share a PIN number for someone or use a tag, and as their needs change, the equipment can still work in a way that makes them independent. And I won't speak too much about these specific things because I know it's a general conversation around everyone's experience. But if you do have questions, please do.
We've got a request for your props. We want to see your
Okay.
what you've brought with you. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, if I was in the showroom, I'd be able to give you physical examples. We have a showroom in North Lakes, North Brisbane. Everything's automated. We have a bidet on site, doors that open, lines. We have voice controlled lift chairs and also beds so that clients who can't hold a remote, they could actually use their voice or an app, and that can be retrofitted to any equipment. We use Alexa, which is a bit of a naughty word in some homes because sometimes our voice controllers don't always listen to us, but sometimes there's a way of simplifying that. We also use Google. Sometimes we might control a blind, which is something that can be done by using a small motor on a chain-driven blind. Sometimes we're replacing the blind and putting a custom blind in, which has a longer life and is compatible with apps and voice control. It can also be controlled by routine. So if you have a certain structure to your life and you want to wake up by natural light, we can have them happen automatically on a rotating calendar. We do also provide curtain openers. So that can go on an existing curtain and that can open the curtains up for you. Lighting is a big part of what we do. Sometimes you can put a bulb in a lamp or you can use a smart plug on an appliance. But if you're wanting to control your ceiling lights, you might use a smart switch. You might also use a switch button controller where you can put them on existing light switches and they just push the button for you. But the benefit of a switch over something like a bulb is that when you have a bulb, the power must stay on the light. And if someone like a cleaner or support family member turns the switch off, you stop being able to control your environment. So a light switch can be beneficial because it's hardwired, which means no matter who touches it, that you'll still always have it connected to your app and therefore your voice. So it's good for families or environments. We have lots of people coming and going in your life, and not everyone is able to curb that behavior that our fathers ingrained in us of turn the lights off. Now, we also do water controllers. Some people might want a bit of gardening and they can't hold a hose, but they have a gardening or watering system and they still can't turn the tap. So this opens a valve for the water to control a hose. So you can do that by app or voice. That's one sort of solution for people with a green thumb. You might want to know who's at the door. So you might have supports or family, and Ketra might want to say, no, John, I don't like you today. You can stay outside. And you can do that by using a video doorbell. So something that can be wireless or wired in. And in specialized disability accommodation, often they have a wired intercom, and that goes back to a tablet normally that's wall mounted in the apartment. And that allows for people to gain entry to the elevator or through the bottom entry and also come into the room. And sometimes you might have an automatic door on your entry as well. And that's where you can control it using your Fabaro exit button if necessary. For clients who live at home and need to use a simplified method before they go for something like an automatic door opener that's a bit more cost effective, we do actually also supply smart locks. Okay, so smart locks reduce the rotation effort of using a door handle. So by having a lever handle on this design, it's a bit easier. You can use an elbow instead of a grip on your hand. This lock has all the same features as an automatic door in that it will unlock the door, but it won't open it. It has pin, tag, fingerprint, app, voice. We have wristbands for people who can't put the pin in it, or you can use your voice with Alexa and Google. And these are wireless. There are a lot of other products that we provide in the umbrella of assistive technology. There's one which we're currently looking at, or we are the reseller in Australia. It's adaptable utensils, which I saw was on the list of one of the items to discuss, and it's called the Omni Cuff. It's from America, and it's we've trialed it with a few clients with impaired hand function, with contractions, or spinal cord injury clients who have poor muscle tone and find lifting or grasping utensils difficult. And it is a looped cuff that takes a 3D printed receiver, and it has a magnet built into it, and it has adapted cutlery that comes with it. So knife, spoon, fork. It also has a phone holder. It also has a universal adapter, so you can tie a hairbrush into it or an electric razor, and you can use it with an open palm. And it simply locks on an angle, and then you dismount with one hand. Both clients we trialed it with, they were able to do it independently, both apply it and remove it. Sorts of things like that are quite unique. There's from a fatigue or cognitive perspective, we use our voice controllers for automatic reminders. Don't forget to take your medication, or read out your calendar, or it might be don't forget it's bin day, or you've got an appointment with your OT, to take that mental load out. As long as you can input it verbally, or you can have supports help you manage that digitally, then it will sync with your phone and read it out to you. We've done work in lots of sorts of areas like that. There was also a new product we've just added, the smart turns. Some of you may have seen them before. So they go onto a stove top. So if someone does turn a stove on and forgets that they've left the stove on, it has a motion sensor and alarm that goes off after 10 minutes telling you that your stove's still on, because the knob adapter sits on top of the existing stove and tells you the position that it's in on the app, and it can send a notification to caregivers if you've left the stove on. So lots of things. I'm really passionate about AT in general, so we like to try to overcome and create and innovate where there currently isn't innovation.
Fantastic. Claire, looks like you want to join in.
I just wanted to say, for any health professionals watching this thinking, I am so overwhelmed, how am I supposed to keep up to date with everything that's available? And the secret is that you don't have to. You just need to make friends with people like John. And what you need to
Yes.
be really good at is learning your client's story, making sure you can help share their voice on the days when they don't have the energy to do it, so that you can say, this is the difficulty or the task that they're having trouble with. Obviously, when they can contribute as well, that is ideal. Just a bit of a three-way team effort to come up with the right solution. But then actually just being able to identify this is what their strengths are in terms of their function and the energy they have, or the hand function that they have, their cognitive abilities. And then we say, but this is the issue. This is what we'd love to do. Sometimes it's, you think that, no, they couldn't possibly have innovated a way to make that happen. But yeah, they probably have. It's just you may not be aware of it. So I think that's something to be aware of, is that you don't have to be an expert. You just need to be very good at assessing function and listening to your client's story, and being able to work collaboratively with people like John to be able to find the right solution.
Thanks, Claire. Ketra, you wanted to add to that?
Thank you. I have a related question. So in terms of justifying tech like that, in reports and things for automated doors, windows, curtains, and blinds, like for me, they not only save energy, but because like many people with ME, I have chemical sensitivities, and I can be very sensitive to light and noise. So when there's smoke outside, or or I start someone sprays deodorant, and I can start crashing, and I need to shut everything down and just keep resting. So it's huge for me to be able to do that from bed. I was just wondering if anyone on the panel has experience sort of helping other people like access this sort of technology, ME.
So I've assisted Rachel per se with some solutions, and some solutions were already in place. I just facilitated some maintenance for her in getting some of that equipment working moving forward. And to speak from a supplier perspective, we have evolved the way we approach the funding based on the changes that NDIS implement. Earlier on, prior to October, we used to be able to provide a consultation where we sat down with the OT and the client and formulated the goals and focusing on the barriers that limit your capacity, and then just to suggest some ideas and provide some quotes. Sometimes we would have funding available in low cost, and we would scope out quotes in a staggered fashion so that as necessary funding was available. But I think from my perspective, advice moving forward with NDIS is when your plan reviews occur, automation is now currently focused upon a stated support in your plan. So previously, where you were able to flexibly use low cost budgets, this is no longer always the case with NDIS. So making certain that you either have a meeting in place and have a plan for the next 2 years where you are consulting with your OT and you look through to what barriers you have and maybe what may be an issue in the future can allow us to provide a scope of cost, and that may be able to be added to your plan as a stated support. And once it's a stated support, you can draw upon those funds if they're approved in that plan. But if you currently don't have that, then the ability to do a change of circumstance can be difficult. And I think that's what the NDIS is trying to limit because they want to know what their costs are. So if we can make sure that they're outlined from the get-go instead of them adapting to the needs, which is not a realistic perspective, in my opinion, on every day and how life happens. We can't see the future. There's no crystal ball. But I think having a consultation and doing those sorts of steps can really help to change the way funding can be used flexibly. And I've assisted in being at a core of work, what we do, there are criteria that need to be met, I guess, for NDIS for certain automations. And the main thing is that we don't want to create a duplication of support. So if you have support in your life in the way of a person or a device, that we're not supplying two solutions that achieve the same outcome, because the NDIS want to make sure that they're approaching funding by giving you the independence, but they may take some of your support away if you choose to have the independence.
Great. Thanks, John. I'm just going to read out something that Rachel's put in the chat, and then I think we'll move on, which I think we're moving on anyway to some of the barriers. So Rachel's just got here, I think retaining independence, autonomy, routine, and control in my life with AT means so much more than just physical help. And I think, I think we're all talking about there can be some huge benefits to using AT. But I'm just going to move us on to the barriers because I think that's obviously very informative for people. And I've just got some prompts here. So I don't know if anyone would like to start us off in terms of some of the barriers, either that you've encountered, health professionals, or our lived experience. Anyone like to start us off? And it could be any of those. Those are just some prompts there. Joe, thank you.
Yeah, I think one key barrier I feel is the ability to find support staff that are able to fully appreciate and consistently appreciate the needs of somebody with ME. And because even though we've got all of these things in place, assistive technology, often you still need that little bit of that person to support you in order to have things set up in place. And I think then that's been the barrier that I've experienced. So for Rachel, actually, when we were trying to organize somebody to deliver equipment to her, we have to be careful that these people who come in will be able to observe some of the challenges that Rachel has. For example, the deodorant that Ketras shared about as well, and their observation of the cleanliness, the kind of infection control procedures, and the timing that certain times work better, and trying to coordinate all of that when you're trying to implement your AT is complex. And sometimes for some of the assistive technology providers, not John, but some people that we've met, they really don't, they can't fully appreciate it, or that they find it too hard, or that they then start labeling you as being a difficult, picky client, rather than that it's your survival, it's the person's survival needs. So that's, that's touching on the attitude of some of the providers, yeah, across the board.
Thank you. And Claire, you want to add to that?
Yeah, probably in terms of, like I say, the difficulties and logistics of actually getting the suppliers to come in, but also in terms of the prescription process, if we are needing to justify funding for something like the NDIS, for particularly that mid or higher cost equipment, we need lots of evidence. And the standard autopilot approach for OTs to do that is to organise lots of trials and ask lots of questions in interviews and could get people to demonstrate things lots of times. But if that autopilot approach can completely, exhaust somebody with ME. So it's the same with any sort of information gathering processes. Yes, while we appreciate that the NDIS needs lots of evidence, we can't just do it the same way that we might for somebody else. We need to think about, okay, what is the bare minimum information that we actually need to gather, and what's the most efficient way that we can gather this information without putting extra demands on the person. So if we do need to be able to see observations, it's can we time that best with when they actually need to do that activity as part of their normal routine anyway, instead of asking them to do it as an extra. Or if we're needing to ask lots of questions about what is the difficulty they're having, what have they tried before in terms of AT solutions, what were the barriers, asking even just about what is their preferred communication style. Would they prefer us to actually email them a list of questions that they write, a response to over the course of a week, versus us coming in and asking them half an hour worth of questions? Or is there somebody else in their life who they'd be happy to say, actually somebody else can answer those on my behalf, and I just really want to focus on answering those. So that's probably it's not just the suppliers, but the health professionals themselves need to think about every sort of demand that we're putting as part of every step of this process, and not underestimating how significant it can be and how can we adapt that.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Most definitely. John's got his hand up.
Just to say that a lot of my role within automation early on was helping allied health staff know what exists in the way of automation, because some of these solutions are created out of the sheer necessity of an OT or a client asking the question. But even so, with NDIS, there is a fair amount of ignorance because they don't have that lived experience and they don't know what happens day to day in and out for someone. And sometimes what comes across on a piece of paper, a quote, seems like irrelevant or something that isn't necessary, but it's actually very crucial. I remember early days in NDIS, there was a tilt and space wheelchair quoted for someone, and the NDIS planner that was reviewing the funding said, "Oh, they don't need the headrest." And I said, "Well, you're tilting it, 30 or 40 degrees, and this person doesn't have the neck control. You do need a headrest, but it's just that ignorance." And so by offering training for allied health and also in the consultation process with the client, helps people kind of bridge the gap as to what's available and necessary.
Thanks, John. I can see Sandra's got her hand up.
I just wanted to add there, I'm not a severe patient, but I have friends that are, and I've advocated for them when they've needed help. One of them, she's very severe. She's mostly in bed, and we managed to get her into housing, into a flat, but then there was many modifications and things that needed to happen. And none of them, no one, anyone that contacted her could understand that she needed accommodations, that she couldn't see them in the morning, only in the afternoons. Just simple things that were mentioned before. And Joe, you really spot on about that. She started to be labelled as difficult, and they started not to turn up, and I had to fight for her just to get what she needed. And one experience I had when I call myself moderate, but I have been towards the severe end of ME, is I wanted a mobility scooter, and I ended up getting one, and I spoke to my GP about it, and she wasn't happy that I was getting a mobility scooter. She seemed to think it was better for me to be doing the walking that I could do, and really didn't understand it. But I'd had enough knowledge outside of that to understand that it was better for me to save my energy and use it for more important things. Like before that, I couldn't cook a meal. I couldn't, stand to make a decent dinner or whatever. But once I got the scooter, I could use that to get myself around and save the energy, which allowed me to have space to do other things and to actually heal, to actually repair a bit and have a bit more functionality. So I went back to her, I see her regularly. She's a great doctor. She's a great doctor that said this. um, and I said, I'm doing so much better with the scooter. And she's kind of like, But I don't think they really, most of the health professionals we see have no concept. They don't get it. And I don't know, the people here, bless you, because you do understand. And I just want to know how we can get this information out further. I know these videos are designed to do that, so thank you. Really appreciate it. But we really need mainstream medical people to understand what this disease is, how it affects us, and that it's not the same as other things they've come across quite often. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I did discuss with Rachel whether to mention it or not, but you've actually brought it up for me. I know back in the late 90s, when I was a clinician in what was called a chronic fatigue service, there was a definite bias against giving AT, and in particular wheelchairs, because that was seen as feeding into the deconditioning process, and also those psychosomatic theories that were had a stronghold at the time. And, we're still just kind of fighting them off now. So those outdated theories and attitudes which were held about the cause of ME had a big impact, because people were actively denied access to energy saving AT, because it was seen to be something that would feed into the sick role, and therefore people wouldn't try, and they weren't it wouldn't actually be good for them. And I can see, Ketra, you've got something to say about that.
So many things, but yeah, I had a similar experience where it was like 15 years ago when I first got longer than that now. I've gotten older than I thought, but I was told I went to my doctor and I had a chest strap, and we'd measured my heart rate, and I said, "Oh, I'm at 160 doing my teeth. What's going on?" And she didn't know. She just thought I might be a bit anxious about standing up. And I was like, "Oh, it hasn't really given me any worries before." And walking around is like at 220 and easily. Um, and now, I mean, one of the biggest things that I've used to go from being in a dark room, not able to move at all in bed, to being able to stand a bit of light, to be in a wheelchair and study and work a tiny bit. Um, the biggest thing for me has been heart rate pacing and keeping my heart rate within 15 beats of my morning resting rate sort of throughout the day. That's how I know I'm resting. And I know I'm not in PEM if I can do that post-exertional malaise. But I was just wondering if anyone on the panel or any of the anyone else has had experience with heart rate pacing helping either themselves or their clients. So apps like Heart Rate Graph, which is an Apple app, and Visible app, which is available on Android and Apple, have been quite useful for me. Sorry, I sort of added a bit there at the end. I was just wondering if anyone else had experience with that in terms of helping people get access or documenting the severity of the disability.
Thanks, Ketra. I don't know if anyone has had any experience. I know that that's something that some people definitely swear by, and have found incredibly useful. Um, is there anybody on the panel? Oh, sorry, Shelley, you've got your hand up.
Um, Certainly, it was one of the first things that we applied for when my son got onto the NDIS. And we just had the OT recommended And I know that there has been some changes, and perhaps one of the other professionals working in this space might know, but there was no questions asked at that time. He had an Aura ring as well as an Apple Watch immediately approved, and it was used very thoroughly by the physio, who was very well trained to know to keep him into that space. And it took him seeing that and practicing that every week, staying within that very small envelope and being able to physically see his reaction, because he was very typical of not seeing the invisible stop signs, as they say. And it was a very big part of him moving out of that severe into a higher level of functioning. So, but yeah, we didn't have any
Fantastic.
getting.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. That's really helpful. And John, obviously, you've got some experience you're going to share with us.
Yeah, there's a product that has been developed which we have access to. There's a company called Sleep Tight, and they have provided a product called Remy, and it's a product that hasn't launched yet, but is in the process of. Julie, you're nodding your head. You may have heard of it before. But Remy goes as a pad under the mattress, but above the bed, and it has heart rate monitoring data, so you can actually
Uh,
link that to an app, and it has the ability that we are hoping to link with things and services like Alexa, which might verbalize what your heart rate scales are so that you can become aware of where you are. They also do have moisture and temperature sensors in them and sleep management cycle sensors in them. So all that data can be brought back um, moving forward so that you can become aware. And I know a lot of it's just about being aware of where you are currently and being able to monitor that and having a way in which you can handle that. And we also use Samsung Galaxy watches for stress cycles. We had a gentleman who had a brain injury and he was doing physical exertion like mowing and not realizing that his heart rate was really, really high because he just didn't have that self awareness and was cognitively impaired at the time. And so the watch notifications and the buzzing on the wrist allowed them to understand where they were in that moment.
Great, thank you. I'm going to come to Megan in a second, but I was just going to read out from the chat that Rachel was just reminding us that we have a recorded presentation on YouTube from Todd Davenport, who is a physio and a researcher in America who has done a lot of work on the use of those apps and so on. So, Megan, you've got a question. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, let me unmute. Yeah, so there's actually two of us in our household. So I've been a carer for my son with severe ME for probably a decade. He's not on the NDIS. He doesn't really use any assistive technology. I was just thinking about the heart rate stuff, mostly because he bought an Aura ring and couldn't wear it. Just I guess the irritation. I'm not really sure. We bought him a watch. He couldn't wear it. He just couldn't bear wearing it. And often, interestingly, I mean, that was right at the beginning. He's very thin and had probably quite a weak wrist pulse. And it often didn't, it felt like it wasn't even really detecting his pulse accurately because of yeah, how he was wearing it maybe. So that was kind of interesting. And ideally, he probably would be a chest strap person, but I don't think he'd be able to wear it. And then I'm 2 years in long COVID, and I'm probably much more successful using a watch, visible app, things like that. And I've just started working with an exercise physiologist to expand my knowledge on that. And even just with after one appointment, just with him sharing some information and like for example, I use the yoga setting. I've got a Garmin watch, and so if I do an activity like I'm housebound, but I can do a little bit of activity in the house. I use the yoga setting on my Garmin watch as an activity monitor, and we've set the heart rate pulse on that so that I can, an alarm, sorry, so that, once I reach a certain point, I know that I've hit my limit and that I can monitor that. So that's been really useful for me to um, start using effectively.
Thank Megan. I can see various people putting in the chat that either they've had success, as you said, or they've found difficulties. And some of those are the chemical sensitivities in terms of watching or understanding the tech and how to use it, perhaps when cognition was, brain fog and so on. So, yeah, I can understand. I guess that's where AT ideally should have support. And I suppose that's one of the things that I think is often a difficulty and a barrier for people is lack of information and those sources of support for how to actually, use that tech to its best advantage. So that was one of my prompts there as well. I might move this on. We're going to continue obviously in a very similar vein, but I've just got some slightly different prompts here as well. And of course, we've been already talking about the NDIS because why wouldn't we? But just wondering, the suggestions for negotiating some of these challenges. So, where do people suggest going for help? If anyone's brave, Claire may be brave enough to talk us through a little bit about the NDIS, some of those challenges, and how can health professionals improve their approach and educate themselves, and that in and out list, which is new for everybody. So I don't know if anyone would like to start us off on some of these. Ketra, you're brave. Thank you.
Um, I was just thinking about people who are not on the NDIS or who are trying to justify things now that the NDIS has kind of changed the way they permit people to access AT. Something that I've used and you can administer to yourself is the Fun Caps um, form, which measures functional capacity in patients, and that's something that can be helpful to take to a doctor or to get verified with an OT. Um, and that, yeah, that's quite useful. And it's also included in the free app Visible, which has like an evening thing where it takes you through a sort of short thing of the fun cap. So you can measure what's happening over time. So that might be useful for demonstrating disability or just managing your own symptoms. And that just requires you to put your fingers for the heart rate and heart rate variability measurement on the actual camera for a little bit. So for contact allergies, that one's sort of easier to use. I imagine other people are using FunCap as well.
And that's obviously is similar to what Joe was talking about, kind of
The
documenting.
mapping.
And Claire was mentioning evidence as well. It's all about evidence, isn't it, for the NDIS? And the
Yeah.
worse, the better. The worse the evidence is, the better they like it.
Yes, it's not strength based, it's worst day based. Yeah.
Definitely worse day based. John, were you putting up your hand or were you just waving to me?
No, I was actually going to say that exact phrase that you both ended with is that across all of the industry, whether it's aged care or child towards an NDIS or disability, is that some people, when they do their assessments with the OTs, they feel a bit attacked, maybe because people are questioning their capacity and they put their best foot forward, so to speak. And I think sometimes it's hard to do, but best to make sure they understand your worst day because that's when you actually need all the help. And that's what an application for OT should be based upon is, John might have a fall once every month, but he has a fall once every month. And it's not just the rest of the month that is not important.
Yeah, very much so. Joe?
Yeah, just adding to what everybody else have said as well. Yes, NDIS is just continually changing, and in our reporting nowadays, incident reporting and actually demonstrating clear evidence of risk has been a really helpful thing. And the other thing that NDIS is often interested in is core support cost saving. So if we can definitely demonstrate in real terms how an AT in real figures is going to reduce core support hours, then that's been NDIS has been responding to that more positively.
Claire, yeah, I thought you'd want to jump in.
No, that's all right. I don't think I can add any life-changing secret weapons for getting things approved with the NDIS. But just to reiterate what Joe said as well, you just need to go into the mindset that they are an insurance company, which is how can we spend money now to save money in the long term. So 100%, even if we can capture data that shows an improvement in quality of life or in quality of or like speed of people doing tasks or like even sometimes the from going from moderate assistance to supervision or something, unfortunately, the NDIS doesn't really care. What they care about is have you saved us money? Have you actually reduced the amount of support worker hours? Or have you reduced the need for intensive therapy, like therapy, allied health services as well? So it's needing to think about that, which is very tricky when someone has a fluctuating condition because, yes, on some days they may be able to make do without having that support worker there. But and that's why it's also tricky because with these in, out, and maybe or the replacement support list, um, they're not really giving away these everyday items unless you're willing to cut something out. So yes, they might give you a front loader washing machine, or they might give you a smartwatch or something that will remove your need for, will make it easier for you to do some things, but they want you to sacrifice something else. So you need to, sometimes it's not sort of worth that risk. And people are choosing not to use AT for that reason that it could actually risk that they lose their support worker hours, which depending on what the activity is, that may also be more important. But the interesting thing as well, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they are currently reviewing those in, out, and maybe lists. They're going through their usual co-design, so who knows how quality that co-design is this time. But how the lists are now, they're only designed to be interim lists, so they could change further as well. So no, I'm not aware of when they're expecting to update that or release that, but watch this space.
Thanks, Claire. Yes, it's a very changing space, isn't it? And I can see Rachel's joined us. She wants to ask a question or make a comment.
Thank you. Yes, I like to make a comment about in or out list. Then there is a replacement request, and then when we request a replacement, we will completely lose the human support, which can be quite problem to me because even I have the assistive technology that can do most of the tasks and daily routines for me, but I still need human to be here to do the prompt support or maintenance or add-on support on the replaced assistive technologies. For example, like when I have the vacuum cleaner and mop robot, that's awesome. But I still need support workers to work with it, to move furniture, to go into the tricky spaces, and then change the waters for the mop, and then even washing machine. The washing machine can do washing and automatically go into drying process. But I still need support workers to loading and unloading, folding, and then also if they check if it's really dry, and then check if when the washing machine is having problem, I need my support worker to fix it, like attend the problem. So these assistive technology reduces the need for support workers hours, but I cannot completely go without support workers. So that's, in or out, uh, you know, um, black and white list is really problem for, especially for those with profound disability. And then, yeah, that's my concern that I wonder if someone else had the same concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, that's the trouble with lists, isn't it? It doesn't account for individual differences, and um, nobody lives in a home that's that well automated, maybe in the future, John, but that they can't do without some sort of human intervention there. Perhaps when we have robots, that might be a different phase, but we're not there yet. Right. Um, I'm just looking at the time. Is there anything anybody wanted to say in terms of these prompts here. I know I was thinking about the one that I put in, obviously, but how can health professionals improve their approach and educate themselves? Just wondering if people have got some ideas there. Thanks, Claire.
I mean, there's lots of different ways. I think, particularly in the NDIS setting, if there's any early career clinicians watching this, feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you're not alone. There is lots of CPD out there. So there's paid courses that you can do and things like that. In terms of AT, sometimes it's just understanding what it actually looks like and actually getting in there and feeling it, moving it, touching it yourself. Before you go and suggest it to a client as well. And most of the suppliers do either free PD session, like someone like John runs things like that for OTs where you can find out about all of these things. Plus the same with wheelchair suppliers and people that supply beds and mattresses. So, and often it's free. So keep a lookout for some of those different opportunities. But probably number one, even like all the courses in the world can't replace the need for supervision. So if you're an early career clinician, you need to actually speak with an experienced clinician who knows the NDIS, what language to use, what sort of information you need to capture, but also can critique your clinical reasoning to make sure whatever it is you're asking for in the first place is actually going to work. And that you've gone through a thorough best practice AT prescription process that starts with identifying the issue and you trial different options and all the way through to actually evaluating at the end as well. Sometimes, like I say, there's courses that can give you the tips and the skills, but actually making sure that you have a direct supervisor where you can discuss so that you can make sure that you're applying what you've learnt in those courses to a real life client, a real life situation is really important.
Thanks, Claire. That's great. John, you've got your hand up.
I think something that we'd like to do is I remember when I was at uni doing OT, there was a lot of psychosocial focus at Sunshine Coast, but there wasn't a lot of focus on equipment and solutions and AT in general. That might be different now, but I think being more available to growing clinicians that are still finishing their degrees to do an equipment day or come and play. We've done a little bit with some ACU students who are on placement where they had to do a bit of a report, but even bringing technology to universities where we can help to imprint and make some open minds about what exists. I think that's a good way of doing it, as well as running CPD sessions for allied health. That's specifically, I guess, on AT.
That's great. Thank you. One of the things that I would say, and then I'll come to you, Joe, is for health professionals to listen to the person with ME and really take on board what they're telling you because they have had to become experts in their own situation and they have spent many hours researching online and with peers as well their own situation. So they really do know what they're talking about. So they are the best person to listen to in the first instance. Joe, I'm going to.
Yes, I actually was very much wanting to say the same thing, actually, that even the most experienced clinician can be caught out, and that continuous collaboration with your client is so important. We recently had a ceiling track hoist, installation experience, and it was an interesting experience because the hoist was installed, and then the intention was that that would reduce the number of assistants required for transfers. And what was really interesting was then that the hoist has a blinking light that doesn't stop blinking. And that blinking light is necessary for safety operation of the hoist to indicate whether the battery is fully charged. But that constant blinking in the dark room for somebody with MS is a big problem. So then when we spoke and negotiated with the supplier, they say that they can't cover the blinking light because that's a safety thing. So if we want to block it, we'd have to do it on our own back so that then the supplier is not then at fault of taking away a safety mechanism. Then the other issues were then that the track was partially damaged, and things that are visually obvious to somebody with ME can be really energy zapping when you're seeing something that's not, even a speck or a scratch can be really just disturbing for that person. And then it was making a noise that was not a problem for somebody without ME, but it is a problem with somebody with ME. So yes, we've got this aid and it's meant to be very helpful. But then now we've got these other problems that we need to solve because we're limited by the available options that are out there. So yes, that constant conversation with your client is really important. And, even the most experienced clinician may be caught out, and you're constantly on a problem-solving sort of, track of working through things. So yes.
Thanks, Joe. Claire, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just following on from what Joe was saying as well, in terms of if the OT just wrote the prescription, got it funded, yay, that's great, but didn't follow up, we're not going to know about all these little things. And that what we end up with is just this pile of dust collecting AT that could have been solved with maybe there was a simple solution by going back to the supplier or a little bit of innovation to try and overcome it, but just identify that there's an issue in the first place. So just a reminder that your job isn't done once it's funded, once it's delivered. You need to make sure that they actually can remember how to use it, because often those trials in the NDIS in particular, you're waiting 6 months maybe from when that's maybe a good time. That's maybe a good short time frame for some of the higher cost equipment to get it actually funded. So they can't remember what you told them in the trial, what they practiced. Their function may have changed as well from that time. So that evaluation is really crucial to make sure that what you've prescribed will actually work.
Thanks, Claire. I think that's so important, isn't it? And making sure that AT is still fit for purpose, as you say, when there's a time in between, but also that it just hasn't, after when it arrives, that yeah, it's not actually serving, it's not doing what was thought that it would do, and therefore it gets abandoned. And there's a huge amount of waste with equipment that if it's not prescribed well and the person is not listened to, then the AT won't necessarily serve the purpose and then sits in the corner gathering dust. Hopefully not your most expensive things like hoists and so on, but certainly it can happen. Okay, I'm going to just move on to the next slide. Now, although I've got here questions for the lived experience panel, obviously we have our special guests as well. So if any of this resonates for you, I would like you to answer as well. But one of the things that when we had pre-discussions with the panel, it was things that people wish they'd known early on in their ME journey, and also some of the things about your favorite type and some of your tips and so on. Would anyone like to start us off with this? Thank you, Shelley.
One of the things that was recommended and I was completely unaware of, and I battled for a long time, was my son had a lot of difficulty, still does, remembering to take his medications at 3 or 4 times a day. And I wasn't always available, and people don't always have, support workers. So for him, we didn't think any of the usual automatic pill dispensers would work because he would be sleeping and waking in an unexpected day or night cycle. And we were able to source a pill dispenser that would not let him move on to the next one until he'd taken it. But the really good thing about it was that it was adjustable up to 4 hours if he woke at different times in the morning to have his morning dose. And it didn't make an alarm sound. You can put it on vibrate, or you can put it on a very, very tiny blinking light, which could have also been covered, so that it wasn't giving him auditory stress. And it was very useful in him also feeling a little bit more self-reliant on being able to remember or not double take his tablets and not having his mum nag him 4 times a day. So that was one of our favourite pieces of tech, basically. It just really gave him a lot of more control over something that he couldn't remember. Yep.
Thanks. That's a perfect example, isn't it? Having control, that autonomy, and especially as we said, for young people, but people living on their own also, having that safety of knowing that there was a they weren't going to double up on their medication due to cognitive fog and so on. Yep, that's a great example. Ketra?
I've already mentioned my wheelchair, which I absolutely love. It's had a huge impact, and the heart rate monitor, which is probably the main thing that helped me to realize what was affecting me in terms of energy and even chemical sensitivities. Um, but I also have a shower trolley, which is a short one. It's only 1.5 meters, and that means I can lay with my knees up in the shower, have some magnesium salts, rest completely while like in between kind of moving and doing things and getting help. And then I always have my robe next to it so I can pull out the plug, put the robe on before I get the support worker to come in again at the end to help. Um, so that's probably one of the things that I don't think many people with ME are aware of is that you can have short shower trolleys that fit in more bathrooms, and that makes a huge difference to how I feel. There was times in aged care where they couldn't shower me and my hair was being washed with buckets and nurses and all sorts of sometimes even with a hose because I couldn't go into their bathroom. So yeah, the small things like that when you've got severe ME, you often have to sacrifice hygiene for health. So anything that can help you maintain your hygiene as much as possible, but also not be detrimental to your health, is huge.
Yeah, thanks, Ketra. Heard a lot of people talk about how exhausting washing your hair is or having a shower. So yes, having that assistance. Um, anyone else have any examples of things they wish they'd knew early on that would have helped in terms of AT? I don't know if Rachel or Megan had any, or Sandra had any examples that they wanted to share with us. Rachel does, great.
Sorry, early time, I kept pushing myself to support myself, not to quit job and things like that. And then that's the only way I knew at the time. And then when you are in a working situation, like resting is seen as being lazy. And then, lazy is always the sign that you're about to get fired. And that fear comes with it. And so I pushed myself over and over. And I had the breakdown or complete crash, had to bed rest for over 6 months. And then when I was getting better, and everybody recommended to go back to work. And then, yeah, I wanted to go back to work, so I went. And then that's the start of the permanent deterioration. So that's probably outside of assistive technology, but in the early stage, there's lots of things I could use to conserve energy. And then, that was more than 2 decades ago, and technology has advanced so much. So I want the people who become sick today to know that, try to use assistive technologies as much as possible. Like things like they can just get from the online store. It doesn't cost them much. And then some of the things like, what NDIS is removing is that the assistive technology is widely available for everyone. So try to get these hang on to it and preserve energy before you need support like DSP or NDIS. because once you get there, there's different level of challenges and battles for survival. It's different game. So I wish people know to try to get anything they can and avoid to get this stage. So that's my wish. But sorry, it's a bit off the topic. But thank you.
No, I don't think it is, Rachel. I guess listening to yourself, listening to your body, as opposed to push through and, just get on with things. And AT is part of that, isn't it? Energy saving could be something very small, through to something bigger. But in those early stages, I think it is really important for
Yeah.
people to get that advice that they shouldn't be pushing themselves and that really they should be conserving their energy where at all possible and learning that really
Yes.
early. They're pacing, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone will mention pacing. Pacing early is so important. And Sandra, I see
Yes.
you want to join in with that.
Just one moment. Sorry,
Of
Sandra.
course, Rachel, of
Yeah.
course.
So we try to keep going. So the advice must come from clinicians and doctors, um, strongly family. Otherwise, we cannot. So that's me. Thank you. Sorry, Sandra.
You're right, darling. I was just really wanting to agree with everything you said. Um, I was told in the early days, the early years, to do half of what I used to do by my well-meaning GP, and I was an extremely active person before I became sick. So, I think I might have done about 8 hours at the gym every week. I walked 2 hours a day. I worked two jobs. I had my own business and a part-time job. So doing half of what I used to do was ridiculous advice. I think hopefully the knowledge has changed a bit, but I'm not confident that it has. So really, really, I would not have got so sick if I had have done all the things Rachel was saying earlier. If I had have understood about penne, if I had have understood what was happening when I was dizzy, that I was actually having orthostatic intolerance. I still haven't had my GP still can't diagnose that properly, even though I've given her David Rowe's book. The knowledge out there to look after these things that are so detrimental to us and make our health decline isn't out there. Some things that I found really useful though, it's very cheap. $100 from Bunnings, you can get a zero gravity chair. It's just a lightweight one. I use it outdoors, but I mean, you could bring it indoors and put something soft on it if you couldn't afford a more expensive one. And I use it regularly. Before I feel off now, I know to go that so many hours a day I need to spend semi-reclined so that I don't trigger the OI too much. I have got I'm sitting in it at the moment. I've managed to buy an electric reclining chair. It's just one from a furniture shop. Makes a huge difference. I live in that really at home. I want to watch my telly, and I can even watch telly now. I couldn't in the early years. All that stimulation was too much. That would crash me. I didn't understand. I tried really hard to work. I tried to engage in fun and even tried to ride my push bike until I kept falling off it. All these things that I shouldn't have done that made me worse. But I think anything on wheels is really good. Like before you get too sick, if you start to notice, especially the long COVID people, if you start to notice some of the things we're saying here, you recognize them, just start to use tools before you think you need to. Get like a backpack that's on wheels with a handle or like a travel case and use that. Don't carry things around. Your mobility scooter, I love my scooter. It not only has it helped me regain some health, but it gave me independence. I had that during lockdown and COVID, and I would sneak out and go and buy a coffee and go and hide out in the park and hide from the police on my scooter and have a great old time. And and sticks, walkers, anything, and you can use maybe a little mobile chair that you can use so when you're in a queue. And another really good thing is there's communication cards that you can get which can express your needs. And I have a little set which is ME specific. So if I'm in a queue at the bank, I grab a chair and I sit off to the side and I want my place kept. And I'm not able to communicate that day. I've got a little card that shows the person that I'm supposed to be in front of what's going on. And I've had really good response to that. If I get dizzy or I'm going to faint or something, I've got a card for that. Or, these things really help when you can't communicate. It gave me confidence to go out a bit more. I'd had some terrible experiences before. I'd actually fallen out of a shop, fainted on the street, things like that. So I've learnt to stop way before that happens. What else was I going to say? No, I think that's it. But I think that something we missed talking about before, or we only talked about a little bit, was the toxicity of things. I don't have a huge problem. I don't do well going down the cleaning aisle in a supermarket, but recently I just had a terrible reaction to somebody's perfume, and it really made me quite ill. And also fairly recently, I've had another health challenge, and a remedy for that was to get a zero gravity bed, a lifestyle bed. Was to give me the angle to sleep on. And I found that that's actually really great for the orthostatic intolerance as well, and for making the bed, because when you put it into zero G, it flips up the mattress and you can get underneath and tuck things and you don't have to work. So I could not make a bed very well at all in the early days. But the mattress, I bought it off the floor stock. They had floor stock, which was like dressed just as a display model. So it hadn't really been used, it had been covered, but it had been out there off gassing for 8 months. So I bought that one and I got a $100 discount. So these things are really important too to us. We don't need the plasticky, awful chemically smells of things that come into the home. It's a big part of it. Anyway, I'm sorry, my cognition's gone mental now, so I need to say bye.
That's all right, Sandra. Thank you so much. Yeah. So these are things for health professionals to know as well, aren't they? That it's really important. The triggers and staff who are actually supporting need to be very aware of these triggers. Now, I think Megan, I think you initially had your hand up first, so I'm going to go to you. Then I'll go to John.
I was thinking about things that what's been an interesting journey for us, and I was thinking my greatest assisted technology is actually my husband. And before that, it was both of us to our son, because we're not on the NDIS. But it's been interesting for us that we have been able to provide fabulous, excellent care to our son, as you know, as you do as parents, but that has probably enabled him to be as well as he possibly can be, which is a lovely advantage to being a young person with two available caring parents. But it's only since I've become unwell that we've really had to explore what else is out there. And I'm wondering, that's just been an interesting sort of discovery for us as let's say, the adult in the house. Because our son is still, well, he's early 20s now, but he got sick as a young teenager. So now I'm looking for all of these things to make our life easier, my life easier, and to reduce the load on my husband as my carer. Um, and so, and only, well, now that I'm 2 years in, it's, you start to become more aware of finding these things to make life easier. Um, I'm just reading, sorry, yeah. So the things like the mattress lifter, which interestingly, I went halves with my mum in. So my 83-year-old mother. And we're sharing assistive technology actually, as I'm saying, Mum, get one of these. I've got one of these and things like that. But it's interesting as a 2 year in, I'm effectively too soon to apply for NDIS. Um, and despite everybody, well, not so much my medical care, but other places assume that I can just walk in and get NDIS, that it's just going to be there. Carers SA, we've had a bit of a difficult time with them finding support because it's, are you on NDIS yet? It's like, no, of course we're not on NDIS yet. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Thanks very much, Megan. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that burden on carers. As you say, your son was lucky that he had two parents who were available, but a lot
Yeah,
of people are living on their
don't.
own. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
it
tricky.
forces your hand. And that's what I'm seeing now is the adult trying to share the load on my husband is that we have to find resources, other resources that are available so that that carer burnout doesn't happen,
Mm, most
which,
definitely. And
yeah.
it's often word of mouth, I think, peers. So, that's great, but it would be better if we had much more direct ways for people to get this information. And I'm going to go to you, John.
I just had a few things that cropped into my head from a low cost AT perspective that may or may not be relevant, but I wrote them down. So there's a product called a Bed Easy, which may be the product that Megan was referring to earlier. It actually is designed to inflate the mat from under the mattress, raise the mattress up about 20 centimeters to help putting sheets on a bit easier. There's a product called the Wonder Sheet, which helps you wiggle around in bed by having a satin sheet in the center of the sheet. So if you find moving difficult on a very soft mattress, that might remove a bit of exertion. I recommend hot water dispensers. I have two sisters who have FND, which also is impacted by a lot of fatigue and stress. And hot water dispensers can be really good as an alternative to a kettle tipper because the kettle tipper still requires you to rotate the handle. Um, Things like battery operated shampoo and soap dispensers for people who are in the shower who might need to use that sort of thing instead of having a bar of soap or a liquid that might be difficult. But even, there's soap applicators with long handles, one touch products like kettle and jar openers and bottle openers that are battery, you press the button once and they do their thing. There's a product that we provide which is called a HydroSense bed pad pump. So for clients who are in bed for long periods of time, but also get quite hot, and if you don't have a mattress that has cooling properties, there is a product that pumps cool water into your little quilted section that goes under the sheet and helps to lower your body temperature in summer. There's, again, this may not be a relevant product, but there's a product called a Toto turning system. So for someone who's staying, in a flat position for long periods of time that builds up pressure or red areas, the turning system alternates every half an hour or an hour and pushes your body onto its side so it offloads the pressure when you don't have support in the home overnight. Products like sensor bins, where you might have to wave your hand in order to open the bin as opposed to lift the lid up. Things like a foot brush, which I think was mentioned inside the suggestion by Ketra, and things like a smart vacuum, which may benefit from general home use for people who might be unable to do so.
John, a great list there. Shelley, you've been waiting patiently.
No, there's some really good ones in there that I'm writing down diligently.
Great.
I just wanted to say, also following on from Megan, and a recommendation that I wish health professionals could hear, is that on our support group for carers of young people with ME, we have at least 30% of the parents, usually the mums, who end up sick themselves as a result of caring for and the demands of caring. And it is, if there were earlier recommendations for support, whether that be support for more AT or support from those health professionals to support an application to NDIS, then we wouldn't require as much support, because I too have become very sick after caring for my son, and it was really just the complete lack of sleep and demands that brought on those conditions. And, that all has this knock-on effect. So it's very common. It may be much more than 30%. I'm plucking that. Sometimes it seems to me like, at least 50% of the carers that I talk to have got something quite severe themselves as a result of the constant ongoing care.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, I don't think we can underestimate how much um, is done informally to support people with ME. And as we say, a lot of people are living on their own and becoming quite isolated, and online is their only place to find their peers. So it can be a very lonely place. Now, I'm just looking at the time, and I was worried that we wouldn't I was worried it might go too short. Now, of course, I've just got 7 minutes left, so I'm going to move things on just a little bit, just because I've got some pictures here, and I'm pretty sure that Adrian provided those. Ketra, you're nodding. So Adrian wasn't able to be with us today, but just some pictures just to remind us how harsh the reality can be when people really just have to cope and have to survive, and find ways to get those everyday tasks done. So these were just some examples of doing the dishes in the shower, sitting down to rest, cooking in the bathroom as well, just as a way to actually get these tasks done. So not ideal for anybody, but survival has to happen. So, just that healthcare professionals really, as I say, it doesn't need to be big interventions, but just actually finding out how people are doing things and is there a simple way to help them improve. Ketra, you've come off your,
Um,
you,
I,
did you?
I was just going to say, I remember this was pre-NDIS and I was in aged care and mum had just gotten sick.
Mm.
Um, and she was crawling from the bed to the bathroom and living between the two places to try and keep her heart rate down and conserve energy and just do things. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's tough, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So I thought, that was important just to remind um, healthcare professionals that people have to find a way. Um, and, there are very small interventions that can help people um, do things in um, a way that's more respectful of their dignity and quality of life. These were the next two slides are tips that have come from our lived experience panel, just in terms of saving energy, different ways again of using how people were, apportioning their energy, and some of it wasn't necessarily AT, but obviously some of it was, and just doing things slightly differently. And I think we have covered some of these, but I think it's people are resourceful, and when they're in survival mode, they will also find some good ways to actually do things differently that will actually mean that they can accomplish these tasks. These were some of the other ones which Sandra was alluding to as well. Potential triggers, really, really important to ask people what their triggers are, what their chemical sensitivities are, especially when we're talking about equipment. Because we were talking about the smell, but I'm not sure who this came from, but things that can gather dust, things that even microwaving things, tap water, various foods, smells, um, smells coming off support workers. I think we mentioned that, but support workers who might smoke or vape or perfumes. So there are lots of different things that health professionals need to be aware of and to ask about how these things affect people before new pieces of equipment are actually brought into the home. So some really good ideas there in terms of some of the things that need to be considered. And my very last slide, was just some resources which, sorry, that's not my last slide, but some resources which I think would be really helpful that have come from the panel in terms of information about heart rate, pacing. This one from Buchanan and Leighton I found really useful. Again, that was Ricky Buchanan. The voice of the user in terms of using AT, Joe's blog from her team, a couple that was suggested here by Claire, the National Equipment Database, the Disability Gateway. Also, I know of Errata. It's not something that I'm a member of as an OT, but a lot of occupational therapists are. And just to say that there is a lot of information out there that Errata is for people who are prescribing, but also people who are using equipment. So it's worthwhile being aware of that. And then the final thing was to express our gratitude for all our presenters for your time. And that I think hopefully if people are able to watch this recording that they will hopefully be in a little better informed and maybe inspired to go and find out some more AT. And also just to say the event is free for everyone if you're comfortable and able to do so. That as a charity, we, ME Group Australia, would appreciate a donation in lieu of a ticket price. And that is any final questions or comments? If there aren't, thank you very much, everybody, for taking part.